This is phenomenal. This is baby bathwater, not even the bathwater in. They've chucked the bath out. Hello, everybody. It's Andrew Roberts from the Great Property Meet with the phenomenally fabulous looking Linda Wright today. And we're here for another Planning Pants. And boy, the bureaucrats in Whitehall have been busy. They've written a new policy document. Changes to the current planning system. I mean, that cured my insomnia for the weekend, I tell you. So what I've decided to do is we're going to simplify this for you so you don't have to read the war and peace that we have. So what's this all about? Well, it's about supporting people to make the dream of home ownership a reality, simplifying the planning system. It's radical. The last time anything this big was undertaken was at the end of the Second World War. So I guess we're coming out of a war with COVID-19, and therefore it's appropriate to come out with a new planning system. So, Linda, I mean, I was reading there's 3 pillars, there's simplification, there's getting rid of, the need for planning permission in certain. Where do we start? I mean, this is phenomenal. This is baby bathwater, not even the bathwater in. They've chucked the bath out.
Hi there, everybody, and hello, Andrew. Yes, very well put. Now, let me say, a very good planning friend of mine put on social media just the other day, oh, lots more planning reforms coming out, but also lots of daft headlines. And she couldn't have put it better. There are lots of daft headlines, and I don't want anybody to get, developers, investors, do not get carried away with this, volume house builders even. This is a white paper. It's a planning white paper. It's a consultation document. It is not cast in stone. They're just asking, yeah, there's 82 pages of consultation.
Is that why my paper's white?
Yeah, very funny. So it's not been enacted. It's not legislation. Don't go charging off and thinking you can do this today. You can't. The fact is, Boris Johnson's government and Rob, as we are now calling him, Rob the Builder Jenrick, are intent on smashing the current planning system. There's no two ways about it. And in this document, the introduction says, Boris Johnson says, no more fiddling around the edges, which is all well and good if, having demolished the old system, the actual rebuilt system, the new processes are better, more simplified, faster, and lead to more delivery of houses, which, as you quite rightly said, is what this is all about. And it's about delivering at least 300,000 houses per year, and then it's getting to the 1 million house delivery. But if you do things faster, what happens to good design and sustainability? And that's what a lot of statutory bodies and people like REBA and RICS and RTPI are very worried about. All of these bodies are concerned that if you grant automatic planning permission, where's the control? How do we look at, now that might be possibly an opportunity for some people, but it is certainly arguably looking towards the smaller builder. So that's where we're up to. And it's attempting to simplify things, but this is about the 5th iteration of the planning system that I've been through in my lifetime. And I always find out—
You don't look old enough, Linda.
Thank you, darling. When they simplify things, what government then do is publish a 100-page document to explain the simplified process. So it ends up not being quite as simple as you think. So that's where we're up to with this. It is all about delivering housing, but it's a consultation document. It's a white paper, 82 pages worth of a lot of asking questions, quite honestly. If we did this, what would you think? How about this? Can we? And anybody can respond. The consultation is due to end on the 29th of October. But there's also other documents that have come out behind and around this, and they're bringing all sorts of additional changes in as well.
So this is a consultation document that ends on the 29th of October, but I thought they'd actually got an implementation date for this as well, which is slightly bizarre. So we're going to...
Yeah,
time seems to, well, what's the point of the, sorry, I'm not going to say what's the point of the consultation. Not going to be a cynic on that one, but I mean, we're talking about simplifying the planning system to deliver 300,000 houses. Now, as an investor and a developer of sites, it's not just about the planning, because once you get the planning permission, as a developer, you've got to raise the funds. Then when you've developed it, you've got to sell it.
Yeah.
And the prices have got to be affordable to the people who are buying them. And they've got to have the deposit money, which most people in this day and age live hand to mouth. And they've also got to be able to qualify for mortgage finance. So it's only one small element in this. So
yeah. You're quite right. You know, a lot of hype, and again, a lot of media headlines have said that the barrier to housing delivery is the length, the delays in the planning system. But it's not the only, and arguably you can decide yourselves whether it's a barrier or not. Yes, sometimes it can take a long time. And in this document, Litchfields have come up with, it takes at least 5 years to get full planning permission. Well, not with every site. I think those are the larger and more complicated sites. But yes, it can take a long time sometimes. So what they're looking to do is to improve housing delivery. But as you quite rightly say, planning is just one element of that. And the big thing, especially with what we're going through at the moment and the likelihood of a recession, it's market forces. It's, you know, it's that old adage of if you build it, if you build them, they will come. Well, if they're not going to come, if nobody has the money, if nobody has the deposit, if the lenders are not going to lend because people are out of work or they've not got the deposit, then builders, as we saw with the last sort of downturn, builders will not build. They're not going to start putting diggers on sites or a shovel in the ground if they are not ultimately going to be able to sell those houses. So from that point of view, it's a very, the area of housing delivery is a very, very complicated and multifaceted issue. And it's not just about planning. Now, some of the things that have been introduced in this planning white paper may go some way towards helping, but again, this stuff has to be set out in local plans. Some of the councils that I deal with, their local plans are 20 years old. So how is the government going to enforce local authorities to make local plans so that these areas can be designated and we can move forward? So shall we talk about the three pillars?
Shall we dive into this? Because I mean, this white paper, it quotes that in the last recession in 2008, 16% of SME developers went into administration. And what it's claiming that it's trying to achieve is to stop SME developers going into administration this time around. So they've done a number of things to try and assist. And let's have a look around Section 106s and sills. Let's have a look around the lifting of contributions to affordable housing up to 40 to 50 units. And let's have a look at the three pillars. You know, let's start with the three pillars and take it from there.
Right. So in order to simplify this, now how simplified this can be in 80 odd pages, I don't know. But pillar number one is called planning for development. And this has been much hyped again in the media, talking about the British planning system being changed into the American planning system by zones and by zoning. Now, I used to work for the government of Bermuda. Sorry, I'm just going to drop the microphone here and walk away. I used to work for the government of Bermuda. And the government of Bermuda is a British dependent territory, but it's flat bang in the middle of the Atlantic. It's not in the Caribbean. And so because of that, they took on board the American and Canadian system, and they have a hybrid system. But in that Bermudian planning system, they have a zoning, and it's high density, medium density, low density, and then garden, which is very similar to what we've got here. And we've got 3 simplified areas that will have to be designated in a local plan. Now, my query is, if this is meant to be simpler and faster, if it's got to be designated in a local plan, if it takes 20 years, then you've just wasted your time completely. These local plans are going to have to be down, dirty, fast, and they're going to have to be produced really quickly. So we've got growth areas. In these growth areas, there is a presumption that there will be an outline approval for development. There's a presumption that development is just going to happen. Now, this is where the media headlines have come, that planning permission will just be automatic. Well, it won't quite, but the presumption is that planning applications in growth areas as designated by the local plans are going to be approved. Now, this doesn't include flood risk areas, so we've just got to be careful with that. You can't just go and build on a floodplain. So that's one slight barrier, if you like. So growth
also did exclude military explosive zones as well.
Oh, well, you can understand that, really, can't you? You know, would you really want to be going to buy a house, even if you're a first-time buyer and they're cheap? You probably wouldn't want to, would you? No. So, yeah.
I don't think you have to say that, really, but
no,
it's in the policy paper.
It is a bit weird, isn't it? It is a bit weird. So, growth areas is the first one. The second one is renewal. Now, again, this is almost like, and we've been going through this for years, growth areas are brownfield sites, almost, or the designated areas in the local plan that could take years. Sorry, I'm sounding like a prophet of doom, but you know, I've seen this before, kind of. Renewal areas are those that are suitable for development. They're possibly on the edge of the built-up areas and infill in town centres and that kind of thing. So again, this is it's almost like a sequential test approach, in that there's going to be this statutory presumption again to do this infilling, but it's not much different to what we've got now, although they're saying there's more of a presumption. So it's almost forcing local authorities' hands to say, look, you will approve this. And the big thing that this will do for people who are possibly watching these videos, hello, I think for small and medium-sized residential developers, it is also going to say to local authorities, from any applications from developers that are developing gardens, they should not be resisted. If it's appropriate and if it's going to work, there's a lot of councils out there of a certain political persuasion who try and prevent, especially some of the more rural authorities, who try and prevent garden development. That is going to go out of the window. This is going to be something that says, no, we need to infill. If we've got urban areas and we've got places with big gardens, then it's a hands-off approach type of thing. And then finally, of these 3 pillars, we've got growth, renewal, protected. Again, we all know about Greenbelt, AONB, conservation areas, SSSIs. So these are now going to be lumped in, if I can use that term. They're going to be lumped in to the 3rd category in Pillar 1, protected areas. And it makes sense. But it's almost re-gifting something, repackaging, putting some nice new shiny paper on it and then a nice big red bow and saying, oh, there you go, there's a whole new process. And it's kind of not, but then there are going to be certain processes within the umbrella of this that say, yes, this should lead to a faster process.
Well, I was looking at it and I was going, we've written 82 pages here to actually just rename Greenbelt, Brownfield and developments. Forgive me.
Right. Absolutely right.
But that's an opportunity. Surely there's an opportunity, because from this, they're encouraging small site development and looking at the section 106 and the SIL and scrapping it and bringing in a new charge and trying to sort of help SME developers, which a lot of property investors out there are SME developers. So where do you think that will take us, Linda?
I think that is part of the second consultation document that's come out. And I think I'd just like to finish the other two pillars.
Yeah,
and
sure.
then we'll move on to that, because that is not actually set out in the white. It's obviously the encouragement and the to build, and a directive to local planning authorities saying you will approve these properties. And yes, you're quite right, there's going to be a revamping of SIL, and that's pillar 3. Pillar 2, very quickly, talks about, I do wonder about who wrote this, because it's
I think I saw a picture in the national newspaper and the guy looked about 16.
No, I think he's about 12. And
12.
He only started work with Ministry of Housing and Local Government and Communities and all of that stuff in February. And you're thinking, oh, what? And I think I posted it on social media. But pillar 2 is planning for beautiful and sustainable places. And you think, really? Well, no, actually, what do? We plan for ugly and unsustainable places? No, but we get those by accident sometimes.
Wasn't that the 60s with all them concrete tower blocks? And
but they're now, lots of them are now listed buildings, and they all appear in TV programs. So it's quite wide. It's quite weird. But the thing about the pillar 2 that I just quickly wanted to talk about was this planning for beautiful and sustainable places. And it's almost like you expect somebody to be in a yoga community somewhere and going, yes, well, we all want to have beautiful and sustainable places. Yeah, exactly. What they're saying with this, it's focusing on design codes, basically good design. But they're also saying it's going to be rooted in local preferences and character. Well, as soon as you start bringing local preferences in, then you build in delay, because like it or not, there is a NIMBYist community in this country. And, you know, if people are sort of denying that happens, well, then that's insane, because it does. But what they've also said in this white paper is that a new design body would be introduced, which will be supported by a new chief officer for design and placemaking in each local authority. Now, what they said earlier on in this document was that they were trying to remove subjectivity. They were saying that instead of just simplified rules and basically a checklist, that if you can check all of these, you get automatic approval. And they were saying, oh, it's subjectivity, and planners are sort of having their own ideas about things, and it's leading to a planning system that's dealt with by appeal. And 36% of those are allowed on appeal, 35% are allowed on appeal, which is true. But to be honest, if what you're going to do is build another layer of bureaucracy, they got rid of the CABE, Commission for Architecture and the Built Environment. They got rid of that, but they're now reintroducing this with a new chief officer for design in each local planning authority. So what you're doing, in my opinion, is introducing another layer of bureaucracy and subjectivity. So that person is going to have a lot of power. Now, they're talking about a fast track planning system for beauty, because if you do a high quality development, well, again, one person's high quality development is another one's eyesore, and vice versa. So that bothers me. The pillar 2 bothers me. But is the argument that if you bring in beautiful and sustainable development, no matter how inappropriate the numbers or the design or the style or the location is, are you automatically going to get approval? Well, surely that can't work. And then if I can just briefly carry on. Oh, and they're talking about net zero standards by 2050. Well, quite frankly, by 2050, my dear, I don't care. But that's just me. Shouldn't say. You might want to edit that out. I could be dead by then. Well, I probably will be dead by then. Right. Pillar 3. Now, pillar 3 talks about the planning for infrastructure and connected places. It's another one of these woofy terms that you think, well, of course places are connected, for goodness sake.
Can't we build houses just in fields and not put any roads to them?
No, helicopter paths.
We don't. Yeah, and we don't want any workplaces or shops near houses because, I mean, that would make it too connected.
That would make
It'd be like a society.
That would, oh my God, that would make it far too convenient, wouldn't it?
It would.
So, right, so the pillar 3, this simplified white paper planning system that's coming forward, pillar 3, is planning and for infrastructure and connected places, as we've just talked, beautiful places, just talked about. It's talking about new, completely scrapping and starting again the community infrastructure levy. Now, the thing is, the community infrastructure levy has been limping along now for a few years. It's not, they keep tweaking it and twiddling with it, and every year there's been a change to it, and it's just not really working. So this is not a surprise as far as I'm concerned. So the changes to the community infrastructure levy are in place. And it's talking about changes to current planning obligations. That is the Section 106 system. Now, we've almost just got the Section 106 agreement system working properly. Local authorities, the majority, dealing with these quickly. It all being set out and being transparent. Developers know what they're dealing with. I know there's the whole affordable housing argument that everybody tries, you know, I mean, everybody tries to avoid it. It's no use getting away from it. Everybody tries to get out of it, to a man, to a person. So there's going to be a new flat rate, which will be set nationally. Well, when the SIL came out last time, they tried to avoid a national rate, and they said, oh no, it's going to have to be local. So this completely contradicts what the government is saying, is that it's going to be about local preferences. And oh yeah, you can tinker around with design and beautiful places, but we're not going to let you set your own SIL charges. We're going to set the SIL charges nationally. Now, something in here that bothered me says the levy will also apply to permitted developments. Well, what permitted developments? Because yes, the community infrastructure levy already applies to permitted developments. Section 106 agreements don't at the moment. Now, are they implying that they're going to bring Section 106 agreements and community infrastructure levy tariffs into permitted development? The prior approval system, which is all these new adding stories onto buildings and changing commercial buildings and adding bits on them. So it's not exactly clear, but maybe I need to read it all again.
Well, I was going to say, from my reading of it, what they're doing is they're scrapping the two and they're creating a new charging system where the two are merged into one.
Problem is, this is exactly what they tried to do. It makes it sound like us and them, doesn't it? It's not like Big Brother, but this is exactly what the government tried to do the last time. And if you've got someone who's only 14, I'm sorry, then he won't know about what happened the last time. But this is when community infrastructure levy first came in, what they were trying to do was scrap Section 106 agreements completely. And it was when I worked for the Home Builders Federation, and when I worked for the Home Builders Federation, the volume house builders said, well, no, actually, we've got used to the Section 106 agreement system. We want that to stay. Now, the argument is there's greater certainty over what contributions are expected. And also affordable housing contributions within, as you say, this combined levy. And for local authorities to have more freedom over how they spend it. Well, that's a recipe for disaster as well. But, so there's infrastructure investment and affordable housing, as you say, could potentially be, well, merged into one. They tried this last time, it did not work. The community infrastructure levy has been limping along and it does now need a serious overhaul. If that means it's brought into, you see, that'll take years for local planning authorities to sort out as well. But if they're going to set it nationally, I honestly do not understand how you can set a national levy for Birmingham and somewhere in the Cotswolds. How do you do that?
Well, from reading it, rural areas have their own system again. Yeah. Which is bizarre and mad. Yeah. So where do we go from there? But I mean, from the looks of this, it's creating an element of confusion within the planning. It's rebadging an existing planning system, renaming Greenbelt and brownfields and development area. It's a renaming.
It's as we were talking about earlier. It's the emperor. It's the emperor's new clothes.
Yeah, I'm not convinced there's anything significantly new in this, other than a window of opportunity for people to look for the ambiguity within the rules that are being created, within which to develop. And I think there'll be a 2 to 3 year window there.
Well, that's what we were talking about earlier. We've done the 3 pillars. We've done a very, very brief summary of, you know, a white paper. Don't expect these things to be cast in stone, cast in concrete, because it's got a long way to go yet. It's got to get through the House of Lords. It's, you know, hopefully the consultations responses will be read and will be taken into account and won't just be thrown into a bin somewhere. But the other policy document that came out and is a consultation document is the changes to the current planning system. Now, why they've called it that, and I don't know, because it just seems to be like a no-brainer. Well, yes. And this is another consultation document, and the consultation with this one ends on the 1st of October. So at the beginning of the month rather than at the end of the month. So it's a different consultation. The one, and there was a social media post this morning from Lichfields about changes to the standard method for assessing local housing need. Now, quite frankly, local authorities have struggled with this now for years and have lost many an appeal because of their misreading of this. So that's going to be changed. That's being looked into. As we discussed just before this, securing first homes, selling at a discount to market price for first time buyers. And then you say, including key workers, but you say, well, how do you define a first home? You know, where's the definition for that? I'm sure this will all come out in the wash. But there's still got to be developer contributions until a transition to the new system. So again, volume developers are going to have to look at this quite seriously, and even small to medium developers are going to have to be careful with this. Now, the one thing that you touched on earlier, and I just wanted to say, was they're in this document, they're talking about, again, a consultation document, talking about lifting the threshold for affordable housing on smaller sites. Now, usually in most local authorities, it's 15. Some local authorities, it's less, and in rural areas, it can be a lot less. Some authorities have a threshold of 10. But most authorities that I sort of come across, it's 15, but you can't assume that. What they're talking about doing it with this consultation document is that the threshold will be raised from 15 to 40 or 50 units before affordable housing contribution is required, and either on site or a commuted sum. So that is big. So for somebody who is wanting to build 15, 18, 20 houses, they can now look at sites. I see so many housing estates, small housing estates around the country that are 14 houses because they've not wanted to go to 15 and beyond because they know they'll get an affordable housing requirement on there. And also there's something about extending the current permission in principle for major developments and landowners so that they have a faster route. So that's also running in parallel with the white paper. And it shouldn't, you know, we shouldn't just sort of brush that to one side because everybody's concentrating on the white paper.
Well, I think that's very important what you raised there. I mean, the permission in principle for developers is actually quite massive because it gives you a point in time at which you can uplift the value and secure your development finance because you've effectively got the development in principle. It's not the technical details of the scheme, it's the principle that that site can be developed. And I think the other key thing there that you mentioned was sorry, I've lost that thread. What were the two things you mentioned?
Raising the threshold.
Yeah, raising the threshold. And I think the threshold being raised is key. Now, I sort of sat there and I went, as a mischievous developer, could I get a large site and split it in two and basically apply for 2 lots of 40? But they're actually putting in place a mechanism based on the number of homes, the number of hectares, and looking for people who might be trying to split a site in order to capture you within that. So great ideas on that one.
Yeah, sorry. This
Been
is
there.
I'm interrupted. I mean, loads of people, if I've been asked this question once, I've been asked it a million times. And the fact is local planning authorities and planners are not stupid. You know, they know what you're doing, what you're up to with this. So no, you can't do that. And you know, it's just trying to get in under the radar. But if you can now go up to, you know, if you've got a site and you can go up to 20 houses, provided that the houses are sustainable, they're not on a floodplain, they're beautifully designed places, they've got good design, they're a mix of houses for the community. You know, you've not got all 4 or 5 bed des res, you know, these executive style homes, and you've not just got all 1 and 2 beds on there. So a mix on the estate, but yes, I think that is a fabulous opportunity for small to more medium-sized developers to say, look, we can go up over 50 and there's going to be no affordable housing element. What that will do, because there's already whinges and moans about the fact that the affordable housing contribution has gone down, because more and more developers are trying to get out of contributing and putting that on their site and paying the money. So what that's going to, you know, whether that is a proper balance to be had, I don't know.
It's big impacts. It's big impacts. So quite an interesting, light bit of bedtime reading that was for us. And I hope that has been of benefit to everybody, because I mean, Linda, you've done a phenomenal job of explaining the new system, which to all intents and purposes looks very similar to the old system, but with new names, dare I say it, but with opportunities and gaps for people to take advantage of. But I have explored some of them, and I think they're closing those off. But I'm looking forward to our next episode, Linda. This is going to be a fun one to watch.
I think from what I read, and because I'm a planning geek and I keep up with these things, there's going to have to be some sort of revision to the fees for planning applications. Now, worryingly, the last thing that I read was that potentially planning fees are going to be set locally. not nationally. Now, that could be quite seriously worrying for some developers, and it could mean that some local authorities don't get any development in there because they're just too expensive. So watch this space. Our next episode might be about planning fees, or it could be about something else that Rob the builder has pulled out of the hat. Or should that be digger?
I was going to say, it could be. I mean, is Piotr involved as well? I don't know.
Couldn't possibly comment on that.
No comment, no comment. Well, on that note, shall we say goodbye to Boris?
Yeah.
Goodbye to Bob. And goodbye to Linda. Until next time, we'll see you soon.
Bye.